I'll just quickly introduce who all we have here. The moderator for the session needs no introduction. He's somebody that everyone knows. Ajay Singh, the principal of Scindia School. In the 125 years of Scindia School, he's the 10th person in the role of the principal. And a first panelist for the day is a man who once controlled the accounts of the entire nation. Am I audible? Okay. So the man who controlled the account of the entire nation, Scindian Madhava Body, former CAG of India, Shri Vijay K. Shungulu, Chairman, DPS Society. Our next panelist too is a Scindian, a Madhava Body and a Padma Bhushan. Rajendra Singh Pawar, Chairman, NIIT and NIIT University, a man who revolutionized the IT industry. The next panelist is someone who's been on the panel of experts in Kaun Banega Crorepati. Delighted to present my principal, Nishi Mishra, Principal, Scindia Kanya Vidyalaya. She is also the chairperson of Indian Public School Conference and a member of CBSE governing body. Under her leadership, SKV has become a center of excellence, consistently being ranked among the top 3 residential girls' schools in India. And a final panelist, Dr. Dheeraj Sanghi, the Vice Chancellor of JK Lakshmipat University, a formidable name who's held many prestigious positions in the Indian academic community, including Dean of Academic Affairs at IIT Kanpur and Institute of Information Technology in Delhi. Welcome to all the panelists. We look forward to an engaging discussion. And I have a confession to make because also we are running a little half an hour behind the schedule. I had to keep the introduction very strong, very short. But we have, all our panelists have a long list of awards and accomplishments behind them. And I'm sure they are getting that experience today to the discussion. So over to you, Ajay.
Thank you. Morning, Yuvraj Sahab, members, Board of Governors, and of course, the most special, the old boys all assembled here, and the SKVians, as it was mentioned here, who have come here all the way along with their betrothed to make this event a grand success. For me, it's a personal privilege to be heading the school in this glorious 125th year. And it's a moment which I want to cherish forever in my life and want to be humbly accepting that it's a challenge as well. So along with that, when we come to the event at hand and look at the enormity of the entire leadership which we are as enablers, and as Yuvraj Sahab has rightly set the ball rolling, how do we look at education becomes a very critical component. And when we look at education in the entirety of what it should be, the word which was rightfully used by Yuvraj Sahab again is that rutifying and the rutting phenomena, which rather brings the system down. So we are never able to, if you look at the taxonomy structure, reach the level of application correctly. As mentioned, the Scindia school is slightly different. So with an example from the Scindia school, I would like to set the ball rolling and ask my questions. At Scindia school, there are tals, the meadow which has come up. We have an STP project. We have the waste management project. So what the boys are doing is now they're learning maths by measuring the volume of water in the tal. Now they will never forget it for life, right? So they are measuring how a plant can be imperialistic in nature and a bun babool can uproot the entire species around and wild the entire campus. So the rewilding is being done, the water management is being done, and the children are learning this. And I don't think that's a better way of educating children. So when I bring the perspective back to education and in focus, I'm really grateful to the empowered panelists here who will have their own inputs as an expert in their own domains to share their expertise and take this world of education even further and higher. I'll move on to my colleague, my mentor. She was the chairperson when I joined the IPSC forum, and a very lovely principal. And under her charge, the SKV has always been amongst the top schools. Right now also it's sitting on the top. So Nishi ma'am, with great courtesy, let me put across a question which people are talking across now as to this national educational policy which has come up. It talks about a lot of changes, both structural as well as pedagogical. So if you look at the changes which have been imbibed from a 10+2 system to a 5+3+3+4 system, the first major change would be the choice of subjects right now in class 9th instead of waiting for a class 11th. Are we equipped as a school to bring in the entire changes envisaged in the NEP is my first part of the question. And the second would be, how should we also look at empowering our teachers so that they carry this mission forward to really bring the educational field in the right perspective?
Check. Thank you, Ajay. And first of all, Yuvraj Saab, and to the Board of Governors of the Scindia School, to the old boys, the SKVians, a hearty congratulations on your 125th anniversary of the Scindia School. I think what we see here is the essence of the combined wisdom which has evolved from 125 years right down to this moment. And I think every one of us carries a little DNA of that wisdom. And that is a huge privilege. Coming to the question that Ajay just asked about the new education policy. You see, if you read the document, you will find that it resonates very well with all of us. There is not a sentence which is out of line. There is not a word which is not something which we relate to, which we aspire to. Because I believe that schools mirror the aspirations of society. Whatever happens in society, a microcosm of it you will find in our schools. However, the new education policy, you have to remember, is not made for the Scindia schools of this world. It is made for the last child studying in the last school in the last village of India. It is a common, minimum, high quality program that we want to see established in our country. It is not meant for schools like ours, because we are already doing everything that the NEP wants us to do. NEP does not talk about rewilding our campuses. It does not talk about energizing our water bodies, but we are doing it. The Scindia School is already head and shoulders above. It's already moved ahead and is already doing this. So let's not talk of what the NEP has to offer. The thrust of NEP, all of us know, is on early childhood care, and neither of our schools have the early years program in our schools. And like I just said, it is not for us, because we have to be above the NEP, we have to be ahead of the curve. If we have to stay relevant, if we have to stay futuristic, if we have to bring out leaders, and a leader is nothing if not a visionary. So what can we expect to do for leaders of the future? The first thing that we talk about when we talk of the future is a nebulous, vague environment, a future where we don't know what kind of jobs there will be. We do not know what kind of training we are expected to give to our children to survive and make a soft landing in that future. So what do we as educationists and as stakeholders do? And the answer is simple. We have to continue to do a lot of what we have been doing so far. Our value systems are in place. We have to continue with those. Our efforts in terms of the work for the community is concerned, we have to do more of the same. We cannot afford to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have all the eminent people sitting in this room who have learned from the ages past, from the earlier system of education, and they have not done badly for themselves. We have, I believe personally, that education and learning are intrinsic to mankind. We learn from the moment we are born, and we learn till the day we die. How many of us learned how to use net banking while we were still in school? I certainly didn't, but I do now. So a lifelong learning is something which is present in us. We are hardwired to do it. We are hardwired to learn. It is only what and how, as Yuvraj Saab said, that needs a little bit of our attention. So jobs of the future that the NEP also talks about will require a broad-based understanding. And that, as Mr. Singh asked me, is also a thrust area of the NEP, the multidisciplinary approach. And when you talk of a multidisciplinary approach in a classroom, how does it translate into the workplace is what Yuvraj Saab talked about. Having and appreciating and celebrating differences, to be able to understand the same thing from many different points of view. In the classroom, studying mathematics, for example, must be done as a group study because it is a concept forming subject. If I say, for me, 5 is 4 plus 1, but you understand it as 3 plus 2, the twain shall never meet, because you will understand it as something different. I am talking of something else. Another child in the class will say 5 is 5 plus 0. So how do we come to that common understanding, and how do we appreciate the various ways in which that one concept can be explained? For that, the diversity of our schools is extremely important. Every person brings to the table something new. Relating to each other, understanding each other and appreciating our differences, understanding that there is more in us than we know. Those are things that we need to work on, because that will help our creativity, which is my final point. Creativity is the only way in which we can help our children be prepared for a future, for success in the future. And creativity is something which we completely neglect in our teacher training institutes. Can a teacher be trained to teach creativity? I'm not saying can she teach creatively, I'm saying can she teach creativity? What would be the subject matter? What would be the course content of creativity as a subject? Some efforts are being made in the NEP through transdisciplinary approaches, where you can have a choice of subjects which are no longer within the hard boundaries of science, arts, and commerce. That is one thing, but there are elements of creativity which we have completely missed. For example, how can we arrive at something new by removing something from an old thing? How can we make a car more fuel efficient by just tinkering a little bit with the mechanics of it? So all the elements of mathematics, the addition, the subtraction, division, multiplication, these can be applied to make something creative. Transposing new on old can lead to creativity. These are things which are the subject matter of the subject called creativity. I think for us the future is that. Because our children are not going to learn how to fix bulbs in the future. They are not going to learn how to just drive a nail through a furniture piece. They will have to contend with Alexa being rude to them. Now they have to rewrite a whole code on how to get Alexa back on track. That is what we have to prepare our children for, and that is the limited sum and substance of what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Nishi ma'am. That has been wonderfully put in words as to what the essence has to be pursued by the schools. And as correctly mentioned by you, it's not only the Scindia schools, it's the school which happens to be at the end of the total structure, which needs to come up, and that's how the entire nation and the country would be looking ahead in terms of a strong foundation of education. So all the points which have been brought up brings me to the second question, which I'll be putting across to Padma Bhushan and perhaps the chairman of the largest schools, if we can call it that way, Shri Shungluji. Sir, if I may put across a question which I take from what Nishi ma'am has said, we are looking at a system coming up to us where it may not be now a linear progression towards education. Rather, we can have an environment where we can look at non-linear progression of students. I mean, should we look at differentiated abilities and differentiated learning in our new learning environment which we need to curate?
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, couple of points here. In picking up what Principal of Kanya Vidyalaya said about the new education policy. First and foremost, I agree that we are not talking about our school, Scindia, but we certainly can talk about something like 400 to 500 schools out of the 16 or 20,000 CBSE schools, which are in many ways very different to the rest. Now, new education policy has to deal with what are we going to do about the course content. Are we going to remain the same and add 1 year? What are the specifics? This part is going to take quite some time. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. So if this is going to take some time, what do we do in the meanwhile? Do we continue as we are, or do we do something differently? For our part, we have two issues. One is, unlike Scindia, we pay lots and lots of attention on early childhood education, because that is the foundation for whatever happens later. And there, one of the changes which is very crucial to what we feel the way things can be done is that teaching must follow an understanding of the language. So if you want to learn English, don't start with ABCD. Start conversing in English. Once you start conversing in English, you will be much easier student for understanding English. That's one thing. Second thing is that going to the senior classes, that is 10th, 9th onwards. Today the clientele, whether it is Scindia or the schools we have, they have very different aspirations. And our issue is, are we meeting those aspirations? And certainly CBSE does not meet all the aspirations which parents have. So we are increasingly moving towards either Cambridge or baccalaureate. That is, we know that roughly 20 to 25% students have aspirations which CBSE will not meet. And if they can't be met, then after class 8, do we offer those facilities? and increasingly schools are offering facilities for both Cambridge and baccalaureate, because their aspirations are, even if they want to settle in India, to be educated abroad at some point. So that's a very big change which is happening. Well, connected with that is, if they're going to offer this, what should happen from early childhood to class 8? There, many people feel that a different curriculum would be better, because a slightly more rigorous curriculum than the CBSE offers would lay the foundation for anything you want to do after 8th. So many educationists in our system believe that the rigor of class, let us say particularly 6, 7 and 8, is not sufficient for a proper foundation for 9th class onwards. So unless we change that, can we do it in-house, or should we change to some other system? That's another big debate which is going on. So I don't want to go on this theme, but those are broadly the issues which we are facing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shunglu. That's a pertinent point. So just to highlight to the audience, because our school also is in the picture of this enabling leaders of tomorrow, we have curated a design in the first stage, which by March and April we'll be finalizing, where we are bringing in a lot of changes to accept those changes which are there in the Cambridge and IB systems, so that the gap is filled. So we are bringing in case studies, we are bringing in the dynamics of cross-subject projects, so that they can work on more of analysis, more of thinking, and more of logical reasoning, and come to conclusions based on their thinking, not necessarily the right answer. So this we want to inculcate, and that's what I think we'll be having to look at if we want to bridge this gap between the curriculums which exist between national and the international curriculums. That was a very valid point, Shunglu sir. So may I move on now next to Dr. Deepak, who now bridges the school with the university level. And my question to you, sir, would be, when I look at the university needs to tell us, the school, as to which skills are required first to be in a college or a university. Because it's not only the knowledge domain, it's also the skill domain, which is very critical to choosing the right course at the right campus. So A, the connect with the industry, which you know better, and that connect with the industry needs to be brought back to the school so that the school can prepare the students better to land up in colleges. So that's my question. How do we bridge this gap by bringing in which elements like internship? So may I ask that question to you, sir?
Sure. So this connect with industry is something, very close to my heart. I've been writing about it for maybe 20 years or something. And the reason I write about it a lot, because I think we are doing the wrong things in education today. There is definitely a strong need for connecting industry with academia, higher education, because after all, after the graduation, most students want to have a job. Right? But you see, what is happening is, so recently I was in this conference of computer science where they said, why can't you be talking to industry all the time about, curriculum? That's the first thing that everybody talks about. Industry should be part of curriculum design. Industry should tell us what should we teach, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, I see 20 companies here. Can 20 of you get together and tell me what should I teach? Let's just ask the first question. First semester, I'm teaching basic programming language. Can 20 of you sit down right now, tell me which programming language should I teach, and promise in writing that 4 years from now, when you interview my students, this is the only programming language you will ask questions in. Are you willing to do that? Nobody is willing to do that. So what kind of interaction is possible? I think whenever we talk about industry and academia interaction, the basic assumption is that industry is monolith and academia is monolith, and therefore one kind of interaction will solve the problem. Neither industry is monolith nor academia is monolith, sorry, it's not going to work, right? The second issue that happens in industry-academia interaction is that somebody comes to your campus for placements, right? They've taken 5 kids, and you talk to them and said, why haven't you taken 10 kids? And they said, oh, you know, your bacha doesn't know Java, right? Your students don't know this technology, that technology, and so on. So you say, okay, maybe next year I should put Java in my curriculum. But you talk to a different person. So, you know, in Microsoft, the HR guy who comes to my campus for placement, he will tell me, Microsoft technologies nahi aata aapko, right? But I talk to the CTO of Microsoft, and I say, what do you mean by industry-academia interaction? What should we teach? The language he uses is very different, and that is the language I'm seeing on this panel, right? I want your students to be lifelong learners. He says, and you know, he will know much better, he's been running an IIT for so long. So the senior people in the companies will tell me what they want in the student is, if I give them a new technology to learn, they will learn it in 2 weeks. That's what I want, not that they already are known for technology, because technology is going to become obsolete in 2-3 years, right? Now the curriculum that I'm going to design, listening to the first guy, would be very, very different than the curriculum I'm going to design listening to the last guy, the senior guy, right? Because when I design my curriculum looking to the senior person, my focus is on self-learning, critical thinking, problem solving, all the things that Yuvraj also mentioned, right? So for example, in my university, we have this thing like every student in every program, irrespective of bachelor's, master's, design, management, whatever, there is one course done which is on critical thinking, right? Because we believe that's what will prepare you. Lifelong learning is extremely important. So we will always say, in fact, one of the new trends I'm seeing in the placement domain is companies come and used to ask things like, okay, what is the basic stuff that you have known, or what kind of projects you have done, and which is all good, which is all continuing. But another question that has been added to this is, what have you learned independently of your curriculum? Why do companies ask this question? Right? Companies ask this question because they say, look, whatever you have learned is going to become obsolete. A typical student who comes out of college is 21-year-old. Today, nobody retires till 70 at least. I'm seeing many people at 80 plus here working, right? When these students are going to become 70, certainly they will be, thinking of working till 75 or 80. So 50 plus years you're going to work. Is there anything I can teach today that is going to be relevant 50 years from now, other than things like critical thinking, problem solving, lifelong learning, etc., right? So the companies are saying that, look, if you have learned something on your own, it means there is a chance that when you join us, you will continue to learn something on your own, because that's what you need to do next 50 years. So we encourage our students that, for example, there's so much of material available online, whether it's Coursera or NPTEL and stuff. Please learn something which is not part of the curriculum. I'm not forcing you, I'm not giving you a grade for this, it's not for credit, but learn something, because that's what is important, that lifelong learning is the most important skill, right? So we work extremely closely with industry, but we don't do the things that everybody else does, this curriculum design and so on. I think internships are extremely important. But again, the way this country has gone for internships, what does AICT says? AICT says 8th semester mein internship hona chahiye. I think that has destroyed education in this country. 8th semester internship gives no value whatsoever to education. Internship would give you value when you go to the industry, come back, and then your education is molded by your experience in the industry. You know what is important in the industry. You know what industry values really. But what do we do? 8th semester. 8th semester internship essentially means that you have converted a 4-year program to a 3.5-year program, and now your job starts, and the industry can now pay you very less for the first 6 months. So they benefit, right? And that's all that is happening, right? So in our case, we say, look, we're going to bring in a lot of people from industry to teach our students. Enormous number of visitors from industry, right? I think that gives them experience. Summer internships are much more important than this 8th semester internship, because you go and come back and get that learning and share that learning with your peers, right? We do involve senior people in industry in our curriculum making, not the junior people, because I think they have a vision that this is how education should be, right? So we work very closely. In a lot of projects we do, right? Our design students, as we speak, are here to work with Wipro. 3rd-year students are designing Wipro lights, for example. We have done recently a big project with JK Papers where our fourth year design students are telling things like what new products they can get into. They are not business students, they are design students. So we work very closely with industry, and I think that is the way to go, but not in the traditional way that most universities go. That's my take on it.
Thank you. That's very pertinent, because ultimately the readiness to learn, which brings in adaptability, is what I think the job seekers see most, not only your knowledge. So if you're able to adapt, able to adjust, able to have challenging situations where you meet the challenges, as I may quote Mr. Sundar Pichai, he says, I don't ask what you have done. My question to you in the interview is, which challenge was the most difficult in your life and how did you handle it? So that's the defining feature of his. So that's what probably you meant by when we are looking at readiness to be able to do a job apart from what you have studied. So thank you so much for that inputs. I come to one of the most prominent figures here. We call him the NIIT guru, and he's also Padma Bhushan, and Rajendra Pawarji symbolizes the technological revolution in India as also one of the board members. So sir, if I bring in the education 5.0, because as industry has moved from 1.0 to 5.0, the educational system also has moved from 1.0 to 5.0. Now this corona period has brought it more to the limelight, where education was had become dehumanized, where even the pride of the parent was, my child can open the gadgets and work on the gadgets. So that was kind of a system where even he was doing calculations on the gadgets, 2 plus 3, he wants a gadget. So my question to you, sir, is where are we and how are we vis-a-vis the gadget and the humanizing element in the educational system, which is being talked about as education 5.4? How should we strike the right balance so that the right education, because with technology, moves ahead?
So, having been involved, everyone in this room has been involved in education from childhood, right? That's the problem with education. All of us have a unique experience. All of us very firmly believe in certain things because they worked for us. And so when we met, classmates met at the end of 25 years, met at the end of 50 years, and then we compare notes. And we try and find out, what do you remember about school? What do you remember about this teacher? No one remembers what we were taught. Nobody remembers. Everybody remembers maybe how it was taught. We remember traits of teachers which are not their brilliance. We respect many for brilliance, but we look at their traits. We remember their traits. And let me also say this, we never quite agreed with each other on what we believed. So, biggest dilemma in education and the exciting thing about education is each of us has a unique experience, and we talk from a position of strength of my education for 21 years. Right? This is why we have such a diversity of thought, and nothing wrong with the diversity of thought. Coming to your question, or maybe on the diversity of thought, the only point I can say is the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. This is a continuous process. Now I heard Dheeraj talk about, should an internship be here or there? You can have an equally convincing argument of someone who said, don't have internship. Equally convincing argument, and they have the personal experience. So this diversity is very much part of the human mind. Each is unique, and therefore here we are talking of saying, how do we put it into a structure? We are moving from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And this big question, in fact, when we spoke yesterday, talking about what we plan to do, we said, I'm going to ask you about ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Which is the hot topic today. But the more you look at these things, the more you realize that the answer doesn't lie in any extreme. So when you go from education 1.2 to 5 or 6 or 7, you look at the human and technology. I think one thing which all of us were trained in, which I find as an inhibition and a thing, is we were always taught, is this right or is that right? So when we were, house master would call and say, okay, there's a debate, आप जाके for बोलो the motion. ठीक है जी, हम for बोल देंगे और वो against बोलेगा, ठीक है कि नहीं? little wondering about what I feel about the subject, right? And I have to be for or against. If I go there and say I agree with both points of view, तो बोलेंगे इसको कुछ नहीं आता. But what did Gautam Buddha say? He said middle path. Now middle path is the most difficult one. Should we do this or that? You do for and against, we are trained. उसकी हम बिल्कुल धज्जियां उड़ा सकते हैं उस दूसरे वाले की. So the problem or the challenge in education also is if everybody has a unique experience. That means to my best friend in school and I would, even when we look back, we disagree on many things. So each has a personal experience. So that is not going to change, thank God, for mankind. Each child comes out as a creation which is distinctive and unique. Now we are talking about personalization. Use AI for personalization. Okay? But who decides that personalization is me for somebody else? So to me, the more I understand education, the more I realize, number one, that these extremes are dangerous. And migrating to a point of view and carrying everybody to that point of view is harmful. Second is, I think, how do we keep talking of putting the learner in the center. We keep talking of saying, empower the learner. All of these things are right, but when you have to do it, you realize how difficult it is. And that is when I go back to think about my teachers, that those who are empathetic, plus those who came around, and Khan Sahib would come and he had a way of creating a pain in the ear which I've never experienced. मेरे को ही बोलते थे कान में, मेरे को ही दबाते थे, किसी को पता नहीं लगता था क्या होता. It was highly personalized, right? And you wouldn't forget it. You won't forget it. That you won't forget. At the same time, when you are struggling and you are down, teacher will come and say, कोई बात नहीं, करो इसको. I thought those actions of good teachers are becoming more valuable. So when you talk of ChatGPT has come, should we humanize? I would say that humanization does not mean put ChatGPT away. Those are creations of mankind. They are coming upon us. We can embrace them. We can deny them. My view is embrace everything that comes. Build the capacity to embrace, and that's why when he says critical things, capacity to embrace whatever shows up. Capacity to embrace. It means don't prejudge. if कोई नई चीज आ रही है, अगर हम डिबेट में होते फॉर बोलते हैं, अगेंस्ट बोलते हैं, अगेंस्ट बोलते हैं, ये तो लगता है अगेंस्ट है. And then our whole life gets biased by a point of view. As against saying, मेरे को तो पता नहीं है अभी, तो लोग कहेंगे तो कुछ नहीं पता है. So owning up that you are confused, to me, is the greatest strength you can have. And things are moving so fast that we are getting more and more confused. And I think it's a damn good thing to be able to say I'm confused. Because then you are willing to explain to me. अगर मैं कहूँगा मैं सोचता हूँ ऐसा करना चाहिए, you are thinking ये बेवकूफ़ है, इसको मैं क्या बताऊँ? Most of life goes like this. Whereas if I say मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा है, she will come forward, you will come forward and get 10 points of view. And like Gautam Buddha said, be in the middle. So coming back to your question, it's important for us to embrace ChatGPT. I'll give my personal experience. Tomorrow I have to go and speak in the city of Jammu, which is my hometown, on heritage. Now I don't know, I mean, what is the subject? तो पहले Google किया 3-4 दिन, video देखे YouTube में, and you start connecting with what you know. And then day before yesterday, a colleague of mine, we were sitting and talking about some program for startups. So he says, have you asked ChatGPT? So ChatGPT, and the topic is, why is heritage important? So मैंने पूछा ChatGPT, why? I said I have to do a 10-minute talk on why heritage is important. Make me a speech. उसने बना दी उतने words, I ran it and it was like 10 minutes. And it made sense. It wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right. Meaning that there's an old, my generation, people remember Harry Belafonte, his songs. It's clear as mud, but it covers the ground. तो वैसा था, ये लग रहा था कि ठीक तो है ये. Then I asked the next question, which are the most important heritage sites in Jammu? एक बार पूछा, 2 बार पूछा, थोड़ा फर्क था उसमें, but it was generally okay. So if someone were to ask me, in my view, which is the best, I would be confused, but I would then contest that confusion. So now I got, okay, these are the 5. Then I asked the question, how is heritage going to be, how can this heritage help Jammu to develop? So it said, okay, you get artisans, they'll get work, you get tourism, you promote tourism, start a museum. None of that is wrong, right? But it's just giving me a framework. Now, my personal involvement in that is going to be to ask people who do that, or my experience. I love museum, my wife loves museum. She's dealt with handicraft. So, long chat with her कि आप जो बस्तर से ये लेके आते थे, मैंने सुना बस्तर, how did the workmen do it? So, the immersion into the specifics out of your personal experience, which come out of critical thinking, which come out of curiosity. To me, the bigger word is curiosity. I mean, can we instill curiosity? Can we, I'm sure we can enhance curiosity, as a good teacher you would say. So how do we bring these basic things which are inside us alive, so that whatever shows up from outside can be dealt with? So this is what I would say, that it's much more when, and all these words are valid. Learner-centered, yes, it's learner-centered. Okay. Empowering a learner, yes, it's learning and empowering a learner. And I think, as Dr. Shunglu said, this whole thing about mother tongue, the criticality of mother tongue at the earliest stage makes so much sense. Because if I know language little bit, you and I talk, if I'm not very good in my language, I can't communicate. But mother tongue is learned to survive. So at the earliest stage, can mother tongue environment be the basis of engaging the child and unfold them? And I think, as he said, that 6th, 7th, 8th में थोड़ा rigor डालना जरूरी है. So I think we have to listen to all points of view. We have to, and then we have to connect with ourselves. So how do we prepare young students to listen to themselves? तो हमारी तो अस्ताचल है, right? And I have to say this, some of you know, we did, when we were preparing the India School coffee table book many years ago, and Arun Kanoria is sitting somewhere. Where's Arun? Yeah. You realized how we came to know school as we went through the journey of making the book. Understood school. We asked a few hundred old boys, what is the most important thing that you remember about school? One or two things. One thing that every one of them said, among the 2 or 3, was Astachal. Everyone. And I'm saying this. And then we didn't get a chance to ask why, but all of us know in our bones that the time in the day when you get time with yourself to respect. हम तो सोचते कि 1 घंटे की होती, वो सिर्फ 5 मिनट की होती थी. That used to last forever. So Astachal as a tradition, we need to do more such things because that got us in touch with ourselves. Another thing I discovered in that journey was the hallmark of a Sindhian is humility. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's a debatable question. Okay? But humility perhaps also comes through the introspection. It comes through the fact that we have to go to our class 4 staff quarters and clean the lanes in the quarters. That we went to Sonsa village. We did whatever we had to do, right? So I think we are obviously doing many things right. We need to do much more, right? And one thought which came to, and I'll end with that, because you talked about the last mile, last school, right? We talked about that as well. What if we, in addition to doing Sonsa, we said that within a 5-kilometer radius of our school, we look at this, let's say 100 schools, which are last mile schools. Take 100 schools. And we take it as a responsibility of the teachers and the students to learn about those schools, not go and teach. How do the students learn? What do they do? What do they know? What do they not know? We are doing that in a university in Nimrana. You know, every student has to go to a government school and teach for a certain number of hours. The biggest discovery, the parents tell us that also. The students are beginning to learn things they never knew about this country. The schools, the children are learning that poor people can be happy. And most of them come back and say, I learned something. So if learning to learn, opening your mind, confronting problems, trying to do critical thinking and solve them, being in touch with the last person in the system, if that is part of the laboratory, and also then seeing how can technology help that school. Can't school be beaming out classes to all those 100 schools today? Our 10th class students teaching a 5th class students, our teachers teaching those teachers. So I think this technology could do. For example, rather than saying how do I use technology to build a space jet, which I will do as well. But if it's all about NEP transforming the schools bottom up, then we as a school, we say we don't need it. I think we need it because we have to be involved in that process. And if school gets involved in 100 schools in a neighborhood, I can assure you, our students will go out with the sensitivity. We already, I would say, are introspective, we have humility. We build social sensitivity at scale. So maybe every Saturday, every student of school has to have a 1-hour Zoom call with 20 kids in that school and carry that cohort for a year. So technology can help us to do things we couldn't do before. So we should look at the application of that technology, even ChatGPT, for these 100 schools and be able to show that our students going through that relationship in a year taught them something which we can't do in our school. I'll end with that.
Thank you so much, sir. It was all those elements which we have been talking about have come out. So before I just conclude the session, if we can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience, because you will not find stalwarts sitting together again. Yes, Seema ji.
Not a question, but listening to you all, I feel as a life skills teacher and as an IB teacher, I feel why Sunday school cannot go in for IB curriculum too, even if we have 10 students or. Because just imbibing the best things of IB into our curriculum, it's better to have an IB curriculum along with CBSE curriculum. And I think that would be a level high than other schools around. That will be I was thinking about it earlier also, but today when I heard all the panelists, I feel so confident about it that we should go in for it. Because IB, as an IB teacher, I can advocate for it. It's above all. Thank you so much, and loved hearing you all. It was so good. I would like to interact with each one of you to clear my own doubts. Thank you so much.
You'll get
Thank
more
you.
confused at the end of the conversation.
Our very senior member is here, Mahesh Gandhi ji.
Today, all our programs,
Take the mic so everybody can hear.
education, are curriculum based. What
Mic.
I mean, all our programs have been curriculum based. But something which has to be taught is beyond curriculum. Now, that's the crucial program, because as ma'am said, we don't know the NEPs is showing something for the future. So if that is to be the cause, are we preparing and adopting power of our child or our student? How do we do it to ensure that when he comes out in future, he is fully geared up to adopt any educational arenas that we are trying to do? Because beyond curriculum is going to be the in thing tomorrow. And the best practices we have in all these 4 types of studies, whether you go for SSC, CBSE or the best practices of those need to be settled, create a program within our private institution, adopt this and make that as a beyond curriculum component which will bring the child into the holistic growth potential.
Thank you, Mahesh ji. Thank you. One last question if you can have. There is one question.
Yeah,
You can direct it to anybody who's sitting here.
It's to anyone in the panel. Whenever we talk about, okay, this is Manoj Gupta, ex-Madhav 83. My question is, whenever we talk about education, why is it that we always refer it to as leadership or leaders? If learning, it's all about learning, education is all about learning, why is it about leadership and leader? I mean, even there's so much of learning in a failure. So we never talk about, whenever we talk about education, we always, usually, in all forums, it's all about leader and leadership.
Okay. Right. One more question, or we should answer?
So,
No,
take all the questions.
we can take the question, then have a response collectively.
Hello. Good morning. This is Dr. Sharat Singhi, Madhav House, 1985 batch. It was lovely to listen to all of you and very interesting perspectives. I don't have a question, but I have a comment to make here. Like as you all talked about the thinking out of curriculum. So I was very, very lucky to have one teacher who I used to sit with in school on Sundays, most of the Sundays, and we used to discuss creativity out of the curriculum, and which has tremendously helped me in my life. And that was Mr. P.M. Khar. We never used to talk about education or any subject. I was a science student, but never used to talk. We used to talk on spirituality, we used to talk on other science, other subjects, and maybe sometimes politics, but more of the scientific background, maybe arts, maybe creativity, maybe spirituality, other things. And that has really helped me. I think that we need those kind of teachers in our schools, who other than the curriculum, discuss with you, with the children, the thing which I call is part of growing up and life. That is important.
So to answer that question, as a school practice, before I throw the question open to the panel, we have a mentoring program now where every teacher has a set of students. They have to remain with the student right through the life of the school. So they have to talk about anything apart from the curriculum. Please.
So let me take these two comments about leadership, why we only talk about leadership, and this beyond curriculum. I think to me the education is really about creating good citizens, good humans, right? But I think in these kinds of forums that we participate, that's given. So what is the next thing? The next thing is leadership, because I'm creating humans which I want to take this society forward, right? If I go to a village school, I will only talk about creating humans, creating good citizens. I'm not going to talk about leadership there, but in most of the forums that we come to, we are the privileged sections of the society, and therefore I think it is my responsibility and your responsibility to lead the society, and therefore you will hear about leadership more often. Right? Beyond curriculum, sir, you talked about, I think any good university and any good school will have extracurricular, co-curricular, workshops, events, seminars. We are no different. Any other university will have the same thing. But even the curriculum in good universities is not very well, it is structured, but it's not fixed. So for example, in my university, 50% of the courses would be electives. So you decide, so somebody studying computer science can decide whether they want to focus on AI or ML or security or cloud or whatever. There are only a few small courses which is compulsory. So I think it's not that when somebody comes into a good place, any good school or university, they are forced to do exactly the same thing, even in the academic part of it. But of course, there is a lot of non-academic part to it, and that I think is very important, because when the student is coming to the university, how did they choose the subject? How did they decide they will do engineering or commerce or whatever? It was really peer pressure, or what marks they got in 10th class or JEE or whatever else, right? I think a good university must provide options to such a person to change, whatever he wants to do or whatever she wants to do. And, so even providing for change in program completely, first year you may have done engineering and second year you say, look, I really am not liking engineering, can I shift to design? Of course you can shift to design. What's the big deal about it? I think good universities must provide that. So curriculum is only a guideline of sorts, but what you learn is up to the student, and university must enable that exposure and freedom to the student.
You want
Will be.
So one more question.
You
I
won't give
think
any answer?
we'll also
If
have
she
to
wants
keep
give
stock
any
of time
answer,
and
we don't
last
take
question.
more questions.
So one more question,
She
please.
wants to answer.
No, I think,
Any
Yeah.
yeah,
So
we've run
So-
out of time.
because we need to maintain time as well, and that's paramount. So just to conclude the
So
session,
one question.
ma'am,
So
Tea time session. Question.
the panelists will all be there. Please be ready with your questions. We'll have amazing
I think
tea
we have to
time.
keep the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So first and foremost, I need to express my deep sense of to all the panelists here who have been amazing, who have been really worthy of what they have spoken. And each word which I have jotted down, I'll ensure that I have a paper which I can distribute and circulate to the SOBA chapter so that we can have a complete dossier with what we have achieved in this conference. So thank you so much, Nishi ma'am, Pawar sir, Shimlu sahab, and Deepak for all your wonderful comments. Thank you.
Just a second, sir. I would just like to invite some Sindhian wives to give the token of appreciation on behalf of SOBA. So Ruchi Chaudhary, her son is the prefect right now. Yeah, please, Roli Chaudhary, sorry.
Our son is the SSP of the school, the senior.
Yeah. Vandana Kejriwal, Noorjahan Soun, and Sonia Arora. Sudha Arora, I'm sorry. We need one more. One more Sindhian wife. Okay. Anushka, you give. Anushka. I think Mr. Lakshmipat.